Who would have thought that after 5 years of marriage, 2 children, and a life built brick by brick with love and sacrifice, everything would fall apart in the most silent, cruel way? Not with a fight, not with shouting, not even with a goodbye. It all began when I got sick. It wasn't anything dramatic at first, just fatigue that wouldn't go away. I blamed it on work, on stress, on the kids waking up at night. You know how we men tend to downplay things. I wasn't the kind of guy who rushed to the hospital for every ache or pain, but it got worse. My hands started to tremble. My vision blurred. I'd lose my breath just walking to the kitchen. One morning, I collapsed at the foot of the stairs. My wife Emma screamed. The kids started crying. That was the last thing I remembered before waking up in the hospital bed, tubes in. My arms and a slow rhythmic beep echoing in the background. I had been diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition. Treatable, they said. Manageable. But I'd have to stay in the hospital for several weeks, under observation, hooked up to machines, watched around the clock. Emma held my hand that night, silent but present. I remember looking at her, pale from worry, and thinking, God, I'm lucky to have her. That was the last time I saw her in that hospital room. The next day, she texted me she couldn't make it because of a meeting at work. Then it was a migraine. Then she was too tired from managing the kids alone. I understood. I really did. I told her not to worry, that I was okay and to take care of herself. But deep down, a voice had started whispering. It's strange, isn't it? The way your instincts kick in. Not loud, not angry, just quietly persistent. I brushed it off. Emma was a good woman, beautiful, intelligent, the kind of woman who turned heads without trying. I'd fallen in love with her at university. She was tutoring biology. I was a disaster in class, but somehow charmed her with clumsy jokes and wide-eyed admiration. She'd chosen me. Out of all the guys chasing her, she picked the quiet, awkward one. And yet, lying in that sterile room, staring at the ceiling tiles, I began to wonder if I'd taken too much comfort in that thought. The nurses came and went. Days blurred into nights. I video called the kids. They smiled, giggled, showed me drawings. But Emma was always in the kitchen, or putting laundry away, or asleep. I asked fewer questions each time. It's funny how we avoid the truth we fear. One evening, maybe 2 weeks in, my friend Mark visited. We hadn't spoken in months. Life had kept us busy. He sat beside my bed, shifting uncomfortably, before finally saying, "Man, I don't know if I should tell you this." I looked at him. My heart was calm, too calm. He rubbed his jaw and said, "I saw Emma at Cafe Lumina with a guy, and it wasn't a work meeting." I didn't respond. "Look," he added quickly, "maybe it was innocent." But she was laughing, touching his arm. You know, the kind of body language. It didn't look right. My body didn't react. I didn't scream. Didn't cry. I just nodded. "Thanks," I told him. Mark looked confused. "That's it?" I gave him a tired smile. "What do you want me to do? I'm strapped to an IV pole." He left looking, more hurt than I felt. But what he said stayed with me. The next day, I asked the nurse for my phone. I'd barely touched it since I got admitted. I scrolled through Emma's messages. They were surface level, basic, no warmth, no "I love you," just "How are you feeling today?" or "I'll drop the kids at school." Then I opened our shared Google account. I don't know why. Maybe I wanted to feel close to her. Maybe I wanted to see pictures of the kids. Instead, I found something else. Hotel receipts. 2 of them. Booked under her name. A boutique hotel, 30 minutes away from our house. Same day she told me she was too exhausted to come. I zoomed into the address. That hotel had a rooftop bar. Emma hated rooftops. She had vertigo. So why was she there? I didn't confront her. Not then. Not yet. I closed my eyes, listened to the beep of the monitor, and felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not despair, but clarity. The kind that comes when something breaks. Cleanly. After 3 weeks, I was discharged. I had lost weight, looked older, but I was stronger now. They wheeled me out into the sunlight, and Emma wasn't there. Mark picked me up instead. We didn't talk much on the way home. When I stepped into the house, the kids ran to me. Their hugs were the only warmth that made me feel human again. Emma came out of the kitchen a few minutes later. She smiled, kissed my cheek, said, "You're home." I looked at her. She was beautiful, as always. Calm, perfectly put together. I nodded and said, "Yeah." That night, we lay side by side. She turned her back to me, as she had done for months. I stared at the ceiling, hand on my chest where the IV used to be, and whispered to no one in particular. She doesn't even know I know. And that's when I decided I wouldn't shout, wouldn't beg, wouldn't even accuse her. I would wait, watch, let her feel safe, and when the time was right, I would leave, without a word. In the days that followed, I moved through the house like a ghost, there, but never fully present. Emma, on the other hand, was different. Not dramatically, not in ways anyone else would notice, but I did. She started asking me questions she hadn't asked in months. "How are you sleeping? Did you eat enough today? Do you want me to go with you to your next checkup?" It was subtle, gentle, almost loving. Almost. But the thing is, once you've seen the truth, once you've tasted betrayal, every kindness starts to feel calculated. Every smile, every cup of tea she brought me at night felt like a performance, meant to soothe her guilt, not my wounds. I didn't pull away. I didn't confront her. I just watched. Sometimes I wondered if she could sense it, that something inside me had shifted, that I wasn't the same man who used to wait by the window for her to come home late, worrying, praying she was okay. That man had died somewhere between the hospital sheets and the hotel receipts. What lived in me now was quieter, more patient, more dangerous. One evening, she came home later than usual. The kids had already eaten. I was reading a book in the living room, the TV humming softly in the background. She stood in the doorway, hesitated. "Sorry I'm late. Work was a mess." I looked up, met her eyes. "It's all right," she blinked, like she expected me to question it. I didn't. She came over and sat beside me. "You're really quiet lately." I smiled, just a little. "I've had a lot of time to think." She tilted her head. "About what?" I closed the book. "Everything." She nodded slowly. Her eyes were searching mine now, as if trying to read a language she'd forgotten. "You're not angry, are you?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. I looked at her for a long second before replying, "No, I'm not angry." That was the truth. I wasn't angry. I was done. She reached out and touched my hand. For a split second, it felt like old times. Her fingers were soft, familiar, but it didn't stir anything in me. It felt like being touched by a stranger who used to be someone I loved. She asked if I wanted to go out that weekend, just the two of us. "To reconnect," she said. Her voice trembled when she said it, like she wasn't sure whether I'd say yes or see through her completely. I agreed. Not because I wanted to reconnect, but because I wanted to see what she'd do when she thought there was still hope. The restaurant was fancy. She wore the navy blue dress I'd always loved. It clung to her like memory, elegant and full of ghosts. Over dinner, she laughed, told me stories about work, about our kids. She even reached across the table and squeezed my hand. For anyone watching, we probably looked like a couple healing after a rough patch. But her eyes kept flicking to her phone. Subtle, but I noticed. She wasn't fully there. Not really. A part of her was still tied to whatever, or whoever, waited beyond that glowing screen. On the drive home, she put her hand on my thigh and asked, "Do you still love me?" I didn't answer right away. I watched the headlights blur against the rain-covered windshield and whispered, "I used to love you so much it hurt." She didn't reply. That night, after the kids were asleep, she came to me in our bedroom, slipped into bed, closer than she had in months. She kissed my shoulder, rested her head on my chest like she used to. It might have seemed like a new beginning. To her. To me, it was just the final chapter. A week later, she left her phone on the nightstand, unlocked, open. I didn't mean to look. At least, that's what I told myself. But when your house is full of silence and half-truths, sometimes you start listening to things you'd rather not hear. I scrolled, just a little. Messages, buried beneath the work chats and shopping lists. I can't stop thinking about last weekend. He's changed. I don't know if he suspects anything. Let's meet again. Same place. I stopped reading. After that, there was no rage, no scene. I simply placed the phone back where she left it, turned off the lamp and stared at the ceiling until the sun began to bleed through the curtains. That day, I made a plan. Not to punish, not even to expose her. I made a plan to leave. Not loudly, not with anger, but with the same quiet she gave me while I was fighting for my life in that hospital bed. The strange thing was, she started being even kinder after that. She made breakfast every morning, texted me during the day, asked about things she hadn't shown interest in for years. Part of me began to wonder, was she truly sorry? That question haunted me more than the betrayal itself. What if she regretted it? What if she wanted to change? What if I still loved her? I found myself caught between two voices, one whispering forgiveness, the other demanding self-respect. So I waited, observed. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, she turned to me and asked, "Do you think we're okay?" I met her eyes. They looked tired, haunted, as if she'd been living with the same invisible weight I carried. "We're getting there," I said. My voice was steady, measured, almost hopeful. She smiled, relieved, but inside, I was already packing. Not bags, but courage. There's something strange that happens when your heart breaks completely. Not the first time it cracks. Not the early pain that makes you sob into your pillow at night. No, I'm talking about the moment it fully breaks, clean, final, like glass turned to dust. You stop chasing answers. You stop replaying the lies. You stop asking why. And in that silence, something else begins to grow. In the weeks after I discovered the messages on Emma's phone, I started doing things differently, not out of spite, not to punish her. Just because, for the first time in years, I started thinking about me. I woke up earlier, took long walks by myself, cooked breakfast for the kids instead of waiting for her, got back to sketching, something I hadn't done since college. I even picked up a freelance design project from an old friend. Nothing major, but enough to remind me of the man I used to be before I became Emma's husband, or dad. Emma noticed the change almost immediately. "You're glowing," she said one morning, smiling over her coffee. "It's really nice to see you like this again." I nodded, said thank you, didn't mention that her words rang hollow after weeks of lies and whispered rendezvous in hotel rooms. She tried to inch her way back into my heart. I could see it in the way she looked at me when she thought I wasn't watching. The gentle touches. The way she lingered by the doorway when I worked at my desk. Sometimes I'd catch her just standing there, as if trying to figure out who I had become, because I had changed. And I was still changing. The man she left alone in that hospital was no longer here. The man in front of her now didn't ask for love. He chose who to give it to. There was a moment, about 3 weeks after our dinner date, when she asked, "Have you met someone?" The question came out so suddenly, it caught even her by surprise. We were folding laundry, a quiet Sunday evening, the kids asleep, the scent of lavender fabric softener in the air. I paused, looked at her. "No," I said truthfully, "but I'm not sure I'd tell you if I had." She laughed awkwardly. "Fair." I turned back to the laundry, but the silence between us, it deepened. Later that night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling while she curled up beside me. It was strange, all the years I'd spent fearing her distance. And now that I had it, I didn't miss her. I missed the idea of her, the memory of the woman I married, the way she used to run to me when it rained, barefoot and laughing, the way her voice used to crack when she told me she was proud of me. But the woman in my bed now, I wasn't sure who she was anymore. The kids were the only anchor that kept me from leaving right away. Every time I thought about packing a bag, I imagined my daughter asking where I went. I imagined my son drawing sad faces with crayons, waiting by the door. So I waited, but while I waited, I rebuilt. I reached out to old friends, reconnected with my parents, started working out again, slowly, cautiously, doctor's orders. My body was still weak in places, but it responded. Muscle returned. So did energy. I even signed up for a local art exhibition. Nothing big, just a community thing. But it felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought I'd lost forever. When I told Emma, she seemed genuinely happy. She hugged me, told me she'd come support me. And maybe she would. Maybe part of her wanted to be supportive. But that night, when she showered, I checked her phone again. The messages were still there, still active. Coded now, more cautious, but unmistakably intimate. She was still seeing him. Still. After all this time. After all her efforts to pretend we were mending. I sat there in the dark, her phone cold in my hands, and realized something. She wasn't choosing me. She was choosing comfort. She didn't want to lose me because I was her safety net. The father of her children. The one who kept the mortgage paid and the lights on. But love? No. That was gone. Maybe it had died long ago. Maybe I was just the last to bury it. The next day, I did something I never thought I'd do. I sent a message, not to her, to him. Nothing aggressive, nothing dramatic. Just one sentence. One day soon, she'll be yours, completely. I deleted the chat immediately after sending it, blocked the number, not because I was scared, because I was done with both of them. The exhibition was a week away. My work was displayed under a name only a few would recognize. I didn't want attention, just closure. The gallery was small, tucked in the back, of a cafe. But people came. They stood in front of my sketches. Some nodded thoughtfully. A few took pictures. I stood in the back, invisible. Emma showed up. She wore that same navy blue dress, the one she wore at the restaurant, the one I once called my favorite. She found my piece, stared at it for a long time. It was a sketch of a hospital bed, empty, cold, and a single figure walking away, their shadow long and silent. She turned around and looked for me, found me, smiled, but I didn't smile back. Something in her eyes flickered, like she suddenly understood what the drawing meant, like she realized it wasn't just art, it was memory, a memory she wasn't part of anymore. After the exhibition, something changed between us. It wasn't a fight. There were no harsh words, no slammed doors, but something unspoken had crept into the space we once called home, like fog slowly seeping through the cracks, chilling everything. It touched. Emma noticed it first. She'd come into a room and find me already gone. She'd reach for my hand, and I'd be folding laundry, tying shoelaces, sipping coffee, always gently out of reach. She started asking questions. "Is everything okay? You seem distant. Are we all right?" And I'd smile, just a little, and say, "Of course, Because technically everything was all right. I wasn't shouting. I wasn't sleeping on the couch. I wasn't accusing or judging or keeping score. I was just done needing her. And that frightened her more than any argument ever could. You see, when someone's still angry, they care. Anger is a form of connection, even if it's messy. But silence? Silence means you've stopped waiting, stopped hoping, stopped hurting. That's when she began to change. Her messages to him became less frequent. Her phone stayed face up more often. She started planning dinners, asking about my schedule, even suggesting a short family trip. Just us, she said, but I didn't take the bait, because love isn't a trip you book when you feel guilty. It isn't earned back through lasagna and smiling selfies. It's built over years and destroyed in seconds. And the thing is, once you burn trust to the ground, all that's left is ashes. I never told her I knew. I never mentioned the hotel receipts, never showed her the messages, never even whispered his name. But she knew I knew. One night, she sat beside me on the porch. The air was cool, the kids asleep upstairs, and the crickets sang like they didn't know a marriage was dying inside the house behind us. She held a mug of tea in both hands, like she needed warmth. "Do you ever wonder," she asked softly, "how we got here?" I didn't look at her, just watched the wind move through the trees. "I think," I said slowly, "some things don't fall apart. They rot from the inside, and one day you notice the smell." She flinched. Even though I said it calmly, gently, like an observation, not a weapon. She was quiet for a long time after that. I knew then that she was afraid. Not of me leaving, but of me leaving without needing to explain why. When you're the one who's done wrong, the worst punishment isn't revenge. It's being dismissed, forgotten, erased. In the days that followed, I started preparing. Quietly, I met with a lawyer. Nothing hostile, just advice, just questions about custody, about what would happen to the house, about how to keep the kids safe and unshaken. I moved some money into a separate account, casually, no sudden withdrawals, no red flags. I started keeping a journal, not to record what she did, but to remind myself why I could never go back. Because pain fades, memories blur, and I didn't want to forget how hollow it felt to lie in that hospital bed while she made love to someone else in a hotel. Sometimes, I wondered if she still saw him. Sometimes, I wondered if she ever stopped. But the truth was, it didn't matter anymore. My decision had already been made, not with anger, not with bitterness, just a quiet, steady resolve. I began spending more time outside the house, at the studio, with friends. I even took the kids on a weekend trip, just the three of us. Emma smiled when we left, but her eyes didn't match her mouth. She was unraveling, and the more peaceful I became, the more frantic she seemed. Then one night, it happened. I came home late. The house was dark. The kids were already asleep. I walked into the kitchen, put my keys down, and found her sitting at the table, waiting. She didn't speak at first, just stared at me, eyes glossy, cheeks pale. And then she asked, "Are you leaving me?" I took a long breath. "I already have," I said. "You just haven't noticed." She didn't cry, not yet. But something in her eyes collapsed, like a tower of cards folding from within. "I made a mistake," she whispered. "But I'm trying," and I'm not, I interrupted gently. "I'm not trying anymore, because trying means I still believe there's something left to fix." She covered her mouth with her hands. Tears began to slide down, silent, like rain on a window. But I didn't comfort her, not out of cruelty, but because comfort, too, is a kind of lie when it no longer comes from love. She looked up at me, eyes pleading. "Please don't do this," she said. I leaned against the doorframe, calm, almost tired. "I'm not doing anything," I said. "I'm just walking away, the same way you did." Only I'm not pretending. And with that, I turned off the kitchen light, walked upstairs, and closed the door behind me. She stayed down there for hours. The days after that night were quiet. Too quiet. Emma didn't ask again if I was leaving. She didn't bring it up at all. But she started doing strange things. Little things. Like making my favorite breakfast every morning even when I didn't touch it. Like texting me every hour asking how I was. Like waiting by the window when I came home, as if I might not walk through that door anymore. But I always did. And that's what scared her the most. Because I wasn't gone. Not yet, but I was no longer with her either. And when someone's still there physically, but completely unreachable emotionally, that silence becomes louder than any scream. I was waiting for the right moment, not to hurt her, just to make sure. She finally understood. And that moment came sooner than I expected. It was our wedding anniversary. 10 years. 10 years of birthdays, hospital visits, first steps, lost teeth, and late-night fights over bills, and spilled juice, and forgotten groceries. 10 years of laughter, of holding hands in the dark, of whispering things we never told anyone else. But this year, I didn't buy flowers. I didn't book a dinner. I didn't even mention it. She did. That morning, I came downstairs to find the table set for 2, candles, wine, our wedding album left open on the first page, a photo of us laughing at the beach, barefoot, young, stupid in love. She stood by the counter, hands clasped together, trying to smile. "I know I messed up," she said, voice shaking. "But can we at least have tonight?" I looked at her for a long time. Then I said, gently, "Sure." And she exhaled, like she'd been holding her breath for weeks. She changed into a dress I hadn't seen in years, made steak, rare, just how I liked it, poured me a glass of red, and toasted to us. I didn't toast back. I just sat, quietly, sipping my wine, watching her try to act like love could be cooked back into the room. She lit a candle, told a story from our honeymoon, laughed too loudly at her own memory. Her voice cracked near the end. She wiped her eyes and kept going. And then, she reached across the table. "I'm sorry," she said, "for everything. I was stupid. I was lonely. I didn't think you'd survive the hospital and I didn't know how to face it. I should have ended it, but I didn't know how. And I hated myself for it every single day." I nodded. "I know," I replied, still calm. "I don't need an apology." She blinked. "You don't?" "No. I just need space." A silence fell between us. "I'll give you space," she said quickly. "Anything. I'll sleep in the guest room if you want." I don't mean space in the house." She froze. "I mean space from you." Her face went pale, and then I stood up, walked over to the cabinet, and pulled out a white envelope. I placed it on the table in front of her, slowly. She stared at it like it was a bomb. "What is this?" she asked. "My resignation," I said with a tired smile. Inside the envelope was a simple letter. No lawyers, no dramatic accusations, just my words. "Emma. We built something beautiful once. We tried. And for a while, it was real. But some things don't survive the storm. Some things rot in the quiet. I forgive you. But I can't share a roof with someone who only loves me when she fears losing me. This isn't war. This is peace. I'll be moving out next week. The kids will stay here for now. We'll talk arrangements soon. Please don't beg me to stay, because the version of me that would have stayed died in that hospital bed. This version is already walking out the door. When she finished reading, she didn't cry right away. She just stared at the letter, lips trembling, fingers gripping the edges like it might slip away if she let go. And then it hit her. Not because I screamed, not because I cursed or accused, but because I said it without raising my voice. She broke down, fell to her knees, whispered my name over and over like it was a prayer she'd forgotten how to say. I didn't touch her. I didn't kneel. I just stepped back and gave her what she never gave me. Space. Silence. Freedom. That night, I slept in the guest room. Not because she asked, but because it was already mine long before she realized it. And in the morning, I began packing. Quietly. Without a word. By the end of that week, I had moved out. No shouting. No legal threats. No Facebook status updates. Just quiet boxes, a rented apartment, and a sense of strange, clean peace. I took only what was mine. A few clothes, my books, my sketch pads. I left the TV, the furniture, even the coffee machine I loved, not because I was being noble, because I wanted her to sit there, in that house full of everything, and realize she now had nothing. The kids stayed with her for the time being. We agreed. I visited every afternoon after work, picked them up from school, took them to the park, helped with homework, and when I brought them back, I barely looked at her. I didn't need to. She was already crumbling. Her hair was tied up in lazy knots. She wore the same robe for 2 days in a row. Dishes piled up in the sink, and when the kids weren't watching, she'd just sit on the couch, staring at the wall. One afternoon, she tried to talk to me. "You don't have to do this," she said, standing in the doorway as I tied our son's shoelaces. I looked up. Calm, kind, but firm. I already did. She stepped closer. "I'm not seeing him anymore." I nodded. "That's good. For you." I ended it. I swear. It meant nothing. I was just lost. I gave her a long look, then said, "It's funny how people only find their way when the person they betrayed stops being lost." She didn't say anything after that, but she was unraveling, and I could feel it. Because here's the thing. I never told her how much I knew. She thought it was just a few messages, a suspicion, a gut feeling. What she didn't know was that I had everything, every message, every photo, even one video, one she accidentally uploaded to our shared cloud. It was meant for him, meant to tease, to flirt. She wore the necklace I gave her on our 5th anniversary, the same one she said she lost. I had it all, but I didn't use it. I never confronted her with it, never screamed, never threw it in her face, because what hurts more than being exposed in public is realizing you were known completely and still not hated, still left. But that's not the twist. The twist came a week later. I was at a cafe near my new apartment, sketching. A woman approached me, mid-30s, sharp blazer, confident walk. "Hi," she said. "You're Liam, right?" I nodded, a little surprised. "Yes?" She smiled and handed me a card. "Family Court Services. I'm Rachel Nguyen. Emma reached out to us for custody consultation. She mentioned you've recently separated." I blinked. "She's... what?" "She was considering seeking full custody. Said you're emotionally unstable after your illness, but after speaking with your lawyer, I wanted to meet you myself." I took the card. My pulse didn't rise. My hands didn't shake. Of course, she would try that. When guilt no longer works, people turn to control. I thanked her, then called my lawyer. An hour later, I walked into the office with a flash drive, and this is where the twist truly lands. Because for months, I'd collected everything, not to use, but to protect myself. For this moment, photos, messages, dates, receipts, her smiling, laughing, booking hotel rooms on days I was in the ICU, her asking him if she looked good for tonight, her telling him, he has no idea, he still thinks I love him. It was all there, time-stamped, backed up, organized. My lawyer looked through the files slowly, then looked up at me. "You've been very patient," he said. "I'm not here to destroy her," I replied. I just want to make sure she never gets the chance to paint me as the villain. 3 days later, Emma called me. Not about the kids, not about the house. She just whispered, "You told them everything?" "No," I said. "I gave them the truth." I could hear her breathing on the other end. Sharp, fragile, like glass under pressure. "I thought you were better than that," she said. "I am," I replied. "That's why I never used it to hurt you. Only to stop you from hurting me." And then I hung up. That weekend, she sent her mother to my apartment to plead, to beg me not to go further, to say she was confused, regretful, still in love. I didn't let her in because the twist wasn't just what I had on her. It was this. She still thought I needed her apology. I didn't. I needed my peace. And I already had it. She lost her grip. Not because I exposed her, but because she realized I wouldn't even look back. And when someone you once had power over walks away without needing revenge, that's when you know you've lost them forever. After the court dismissed her attempt to gain full custody, something inside Emma finally gave way. She stopped fighting. No more texts, no more apologies, no more excuses wrapped in trembling words. Just silence. For the first time in years, we existed in parallel, no longer two ends of a frayed rope pulling each other apart, but two quiet people walking away, finally letting go. And it wasn't sadness I felt. It wasn't triumph either. It was peace. A strange kind of peace, the kind that doesn't roar or sing, but hums quietly beneath your skin, letting you sleep through the night, letting you breathe all the way to the bottom of your lungs again. The kids adapted faster than I expected. Children are incredibly resilient when they feel safe. I made sure they did. Emma, to her credit, tried too. She never said a word against me to them. I did the same. We agreed. They would never be caught between our ashes. I rented a small place near the lake. Nothing fancy, just enough. The kitchen light flickered sometimes, the windows stuck in the cold. But it was mine. Every inch of it felt honest. No secrets in the walls, no lies tucked beneath the sheets. And there, in that imperfect little space, I started living again. I drew more. I sold my first real piece to a gallery downtown. It wasn't much, but it paid the rent that month. I laughed with strangers. I learned how to cook more than just eggs. I joined a community center art class, not as a teacher, just as a guy who wanted to feel human again. And sometimes, when the night was quiet, I'd think of her, not with bitterness, not even with longing, just a quiet ache, the kind you feel when you remember an old song or a place that used to mean something before time turned it into memory. I no longer hated her, because hate still gives someone space in your life, and she no longer lived in mine. One day, months after everything settled, I saw her again. At the kids' school recital, she was standing near the back, alone. No makeup, hair tied back, eyes tired. When our daughter ran up to me after her performance, she wrapped her arms around my neck and whispered, "Did you like it, Daddy?" I said, "You were the best part of the whole show." Emma watched us. I saw it in her face, that flicker of pain, that realization of how much I'd grown in her absence, how much she'd lost that had nothing to do with court rulings or signatures on paper. After the event, she approached me, not to argue, not to ask for anything, just to say something she hadn't said before. "Liam," she said, "I'm glad you're okay now. I didn't think you'd come back from everything." I looked at her, calm, gentle. "I didn't come back," I replied. "I became someone else." She nodded, eyes glassy. And for once, she didn't try to explain. She didn't ask me to stay. She didn't beg for forgiveness. She just walked away. And in that moment, I finally understood. Closure doesn't come from someone else fixing the damage. It comes from walking through the wreckage, barefoot, bleeding, and realizing you survived. And not only did I survive, I thrived, loved again. Slowly, quietly, in a way that didn't try to replace the past, but honored how much I'd learned from it. I met someone months later, not through an app or a friend, but at the park while sketching. She wasn't perfect. Neither was I, but we were honest, and that was enough. And if there's one thing I'd say to anyone out there still staring at the ceiling, wondering if the pain will ever stop, it's this. You won't always get the apology. You won't always get justice. But you can always choose dignity. You can always choose yourself. I walked out of that house without a word, not because I didn't have anything to say, but because I didn't need to say it anymore. She already knew, and sometimes that's the most powerful thing you can leave behind.